All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our final presentation for this class. This is for VITI 300, Intro to Viticulture and Enology, and this is our Grape Varieties presentation. So we've spent a lot of time working in the vineyard, looking at a lot of technicalities of vineyard planning, soil amendments, and training, and things like that. Now, for the very end of class, we're going to shift gears and get you prepared for more of the wine side. So these are grape varieties. And the way that I've written this presentation is to cover some of the top wines from three of the largest, most famous, well-known producing regions or countries, and that's Italy, France, and Spain. But with that, the varieties that I will be talking about specifically are varieties that you can very easily find in Sierra foothills wineries and tasting rooms. So it's crafted and was put together with that lens. So if you are interested and if you want to learn more, there's so much more to learn about these countries and the wines that are there. I highly recommend that you scratch that itch and do that research and learn for yourself. But for this presentation, for the sake of time, but also for the sake of relevance, we're going to stick to the varieties that we can find grown, produced, and served in the Sierra foothills. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to do a quick sneak peek about where wine came from. So let's go ahead and go into that. So wine, Vitis vinifera, the varieties that we know and love that make the wine that we love to enjoy, like Merlot, Malbec, Tempranillo, Sangiovese, Sauvignon Blanc, etc. All of those, right? All of those come from an ancient world region called Caucasus region. And what that is in modern day, what that includes is modern day Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, northern Iran, southeastern Anatolia, and eastern Turkey, right? So very much so in this ancient region, right? And there's a lot of discussion about who came first, what was first. There's a lot of politics involved, right? A lot of things going on. But that general area is where all wine traces originate from, right? So all the DNA testing, all the archaeological finds come from that region as a whole. Cool. So with that in mind, right, now as wine spread out through the centuries and how it's developed and planted and differentiated and created new species and new varieties, right? Every country, at least today, I think every country in the world produces wine, at least to some extent, right? And Vitis vinifera wine specifically, which is really amazing. So it's this agricultural product, this ancient, tradition to make, has spread across the globe. We've, perfected it in a lot of ways. We have a lot of industry and research and advancements in technology that have developed this product. And so every country has their own varieties, their own specialties, and their own styles. And that's what really makes wine really interesting, is there's the art and the science, but there's also a representation of that culture in a glass, right? So a lot to love about wine. So we talk about Italy. Italy is our first stop, our first country I want to talk about tonight. Italy is extensive. There's grape varieties planted everywhere. So if you look at this map, all these lovely little color blotches of this map, these are wine grape growing areas and winemaking regions, right? Italy is so associated with wine, just like France, right? And some other countries too, but they say that vineyards are so common in Italy, it's the same as a lawn in America, right? So you think of how you drive through neighborhoods in America, people have lawns, they might have turf these days, but just where you see lawns in the United States, in front of homes, you see vineyards in front of houses. So wine is very much engraved in the culture of Italy. A lot of people make their own wine. Some people just do it in their basement. You can get a plastic bottle and fill it up with wine somewhere, just like you would purchase gas or anything else, right? So it's everywhere. Wine is everywhere. And Italy is amazing because they have more than 500 native grape varieties, which is really cool. So some of the ones that we have planted here in the Sierra foothills in the United States that have been very successful because we have similar climates to parts of Italy are the Barbera, Primitivo, Sangiovese, and Negro Amaro, which are some really good ones. And those are just a few, right? Those are some that you can very commonly find in the tasting rooms of the Sierra foothills, and those grapes originate from Italy, which is really cool. So Barbera. Barbera is one of the most common varieties in Italy, but also in the Sierra foothills. Barbera is very famous from Boger and Cooper vineyards. Boger is definitely like the Barbera king of El Dorado County, and Cooper is the Barbera king of Amador County, right? And Barbera is super happy here. A lot of Italian varieties are happy here because we can have some pretty hot summers, and Italian varieties are known to keep their acidity really well. So they can tolerate the heat, they can still make balanced wines, and they make really food happy wines. So you think about Italian wine, think about Italian food, right? So very much part of that. So here I have a picture from Wine Folly with primary flavors and a taste profile for Barbera. If you're new to wine, don't worry, it's okay. Wine Folly is an excellent resource for beginners for wine. I like to think of it as like a baby's first steps. She does a very good job of laying things out in a way that's very visually appealing. She has a lot of experience in graphic design, and she's also a sommelier. So Wine Folly is a good book. So I've taken a lot of those graphics from those tasting pages and I put them onto these slides for a reference, right? So for primary flavors of Barbera, we have cherry, licorice, blackberry, dried herbs, and black pepper. So those are kind of like a baseline, general primary like flavors and aromas that come from Barbera, but by no means is it exclusive to only what you could get. That's the beauty of trying Barbera from different places, is a Barbera from Italy will taste different than a Barbera from the Sierra foothills, which will taste different from a Barbera from, San Diego or something, right? So it's going to be very different no matter where you go. Okay, Sangiovese, another really common Italian variety. You'll see this all over the Sierra foothills as well. This is typically, it can be made in like a lighter red wine style. It can be bolder sometimes too. Depends on the clone that they're growing and that they have. But Sangiovese can really take on a savory component. So that's why we're seeing primary flavors of roasted tomato, oregano, espresso, and sweet balsamic, right? It does have fruit as well, that cherry component. It really depends on who's making it and what style that they're trying to bring out in that process, right? So honorable mention goes to Vino Noceto on this one. Vino Noceto is a winery in Amador County, and they are known for their Sangiovese. Fantastic varieties, and also a really nice lineup of different Sangioveses there that are really wonderful. So very good wine. Also a good entry-level wine for someone who's drinking reds for the first time. Sangiovese. Primitivo is a really fun variety. It's actually the Italian clone of Zinfandel. Zinfandel is the American clone, and they actually both are clones of a Croatian grape called Kraljenak. I'm gonna mispronounce that. Crljenak, and it's Croatian, and that's where they both trace from. So they are basically identical except for a couple of traits that have genetic switches that have turned on or off or been deleted over time due to pest pressures or just random mutations. But we grow both Primitivo and Zinfandel here in the Sierra foothills. They're very common. They're similar to each other in a lot of ways, but we can't actually label them. We can't interchange the names on labels. We have to stick to either Zinfandel or Primitivo for our labeling. So very fun, kind of interesting connection there, right? To see what we have. So if you go to a tasting room and they have Primitivo and Zinfandel, it might be really fun to ask if you can do a side-by-side so you can tell the difference, right? I can't really make too much generalizations about Primitivo versus Zinfandel. I know Zinfandel tends to be a lot more intense and more spicy than Primitivo, but depending on who's making it and how they're making it, that might be a little bit different story. So if you go to a tasting room, I highly recommend doing a side-by-side if they let you, right? Okay. So honorable mention for Primitivo goes to Cedarville, Zinfandel specifically, the OGP, Zinfandel specifically, and then Miraflores, Zinfandel. So recommendations for Zinfandel, even though it's a Primitivo slide. Boker has a really good Primitivo. I really like our Primitivo a lot. But there's some interesting flavors here, right? So we get a lot of fruit, maybe ripe fruit, and then spices. So one that always stuck out to me was the peach preserves. I thought this was kind of like, oh, I didn't think that this would be for Primitivo or Zinfandel, but I did taste a Zinfandel with the peach preserves in it. It was from Central Valley, Lodi. But the spices, I absolutely agree with. The cinnamon and sweet tobacco, definitely can get that from Zinfandel. Okay, so again, very just tip of the iceberg with this presentation, right? This is just like maybe some flashcards to give someone who's new to the area, introduce them to wine for the first time, right? So if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, this is so simple, that's okay. It's good. That means you know these things, right? But this is just intended as a baby's first steps into wine. Okay, next country we're going to move into is France, right? So France is one of the most highly respected wine regions of the world. It is like the gastronomic capital of the world. They know they have perfected a lot of food, cooking, and wine also, right? So a lot of proud culture, a lot of ancient culture in France, really old culture, right, around those things. So France offers a lot, and there's a lot of things in here that even if you aren't familiar with wine, you might have heard these before because they're easily referenced, like Champagne, Beaujolais, Bordeaux, Rhone, Provence, Alsace, right? So just hearing those words, you might be like, oh, I've heard that in a movie or heard a wine person say that, right? So that can be just an indication of how popular French wine is, right? So we're just going to go over 3. And I apologize. I know there are a lot of people who will watch this who adore France and they're like, oh my gosh, that is like not even the tip of the iceberg. That is so generalized, right? Again, take the Wines of the World class if you're really into this. Do a tasting if you can afford it. Travel, right? But again, baby's first steps is what's intended for this presentation. So the first one, Bordeaux, right? If you know nothing about Bordeaux wines, you should know the 5 big red Bordeaux varieties, and that's the 2 Cabs, the 2 M's, and Petit Verdot. That's how I remember it. So Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, Merlot, Malbec, Petit Verdot. Those are the big 5 red Bordeaux varieties, right? For Bordeaux whites, we have Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, Muscadel, and then we have Sauternes, and those are sweet white wines, right? So for Bordeaux, what you'll hear when you get into it more is the difference between left bank and right bank, right? So these are different like microclimates of each other and different specialties, right? So a lot of the times we'll see a Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot blend, and then you can have more Cab, more Merlot, or other things too. So left bank versus right, you'll have to look up because I don't want to misquote the difference at this moment. But when you get more into it, then you can talk about the very specific regions like Graves, Pomerol, and things like that, right? So I'm hoping one day that I can travel to these places and be better, have more knowledge about these specifically. But my background and my upbringing in the Sierra foothills, I'm very, very confident on what's here. But I hope to do some traveling soon. So, okay. So, Sauvignon Blanc. You'll find Sauvignon Blanc everywhere. Sierra foothills, Sauvignon Blanc grows like a weed. It's extremely vigorous, grape variety. So, almost everyone makes a Sauvignon Blanc. And it's one of the most popular white wines in the world right next to Chardonnay, right? So, Sauvignon Blanc is just a really good white wine. Of course, it originated in France. It has taken up tremendous popularity in Sauvignon Blancs from New Zealand, which is really cool. Very different styles. New Zealand is much more passion fruit and tropical. French is much more of like that citrus, I would say. So honorable mention for Sauv Blanc, Boger, Andis, and Terre Rouge. Really good Sauvignon Blancs from there. Those are just local wineries, right? If you're looking for a really good Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, Whitehaven, and Oyster Bay. And they're inexpensive wines. That's the crazy thing too. But originally, Sauv Blanc is from France. Okay, Cabernet Sauvignon. Probably Cab Sauv, Chardonnay are the most popular grape varieties grown in the United States and probably across the world as a whole, acreage-wise too. But it's Cab Sauv, definitely the most popular red around the world. It's considered a noble grape because of this. It's also criticized, I thought this was really interesting, as a colonizer grape because people are enjoying Cabernet Sauvignon so much, and other regions that can grow grapes are planting so much Cab that's actually outcompeting the native varieties of those regions and actually like kind of like snuffing them out and like suffocating them. So like take Italy for example, they have over 500 different native grape varieties. So a lot of those aren't commonly known or maybe even popularly sold, right? So if you're trying to import wine and you're a grower from Italy, no one's going to buy these lesser known varieties, at least not in a large amount. So you plant Cab instead, then you tear out something that's native. Well, once that native plant is gone, it's gone, right? So that's why it's criticized as a colonizer grape. The parent varieties of Cabernet Sauvignon, this is always a good trick to know. Everyone likes this little fun fact, is Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc. So Cabernet Franc, Sauvignon Blanc came together, a red and a white grape variety. One pollinated the others, and then those seeds was a cross of genetics, right? And so Cabernet Sauvignon was born from that. So the name Cabernet and then Sauvignon is taken from each of the parents, hence the name Cabernet Sauvignon. Okay, honorable mention. Some of the best cabs in the area, Plein Air Vineyards and Cedarville Vineyards. The trophy for this really just goes to Cedarville because Plein Air just purchases the Cedarville fruit. I didn't know that at the time that I made this presentation, but I do now. So Cedarville Cab, you definitely have to try. It's one of the best locally. So for flavors of Cab, we're looking at black cherry. Black currant is a really common flavor in like Napa Cabs. Some of them here can have it too, but also not everyone is super familiar with black currant. You can actually buy black currant tea. I think you can also get black currant liqueur and try that too to get a feel for it, but not a super common flavor here in the United States. Next we have cedar, baking spices, and graphite, which is cool. Okay. Cab Franc, on the other hand, has a really different nuance. Cab Franc has a real earthy kick to it. So this bell pepper component in Cab Franc is actually present in some Cabernet Sauvignons and also in Sauvignon Blanc as well. So it's like a trait that the whole family has of grapes. But Cabernet Franc can take on a really interesting crushed gravel and chili pepper component. It can also take on mint and so the concept of what we call Sierra spice. So the oils from all the trees that grow around the vineyards at these high elevation areas get onto the grapes, and some grape varieties are actually utilize this and express this more than others. I find that the Cabernet Franc from Boger has a ton of the Sierra spice character. So if you like pine and just kind of like Christmas tree scents, it's in that Cab Franc. I swear, you have to try it. Other wineries that are known for their Cab Franc, like honorable mention, Bumgarner, La Casque, Madronia, make fantastic, really nice, and like very serious Cab Francs. So if you like Cab Franc, check it out. Okay, next is Malbec. Comes from France. We see it a lot very often used as a blending variety in France, but in Argentina, this variety is king. So 2/3 of the total acres that are planted in Argentina is just Malbec, which is really cool, right? So this is where it gets kind of confusing, right? So like all grape varieties came from the Caucasus region, right, in that ancient kind of world area. Then they split out to their countries, and then they differentiated over time and developed new subspecies or varieties. But Malbec is from France, and then it became popular in Argentina. So people will start to assume that Malbec is native to Argentina, but it's not, right? So it just depends. Okay, Malbec is a really fun grape variety. I wish more people produced it in the Sierra foothills. It gives red plum, blackberry, vanilla, sweet tobacco, and cocoa components. And a lot of people, there are a handful of people that produce it but use it as a blender. Polynesian Girl makes an actual just Malbec, which is really nice. So I highly recommend you check that out if you're interested. Okay. What we see a lot of with the Bordeaux reds in the area is we see a lot of blends. Most everyone will have some kind of Bordeaux blend. For that, we have Bumgarner, which is their Many Hands label. And then Windwalker Vineyards, their Lady in Red, is their Bordeaux blend. And they're both very fantastic, high-end, wonderfully made wines. Here's that information about left bank versus right bank of Bordeaux, right? So left bank blends are Cabernet Sauvignon dominant, whereas right bank blends are Merlot dominant, right? And then the flavors for a blend just depends the percentages that are in it. But these are typically like really bold, really complex wines, right? Full-bodied, high tannins with medium acidity. Okay, so moving from Bordeaux to Burgundy, right? Burgundy is another just like different subculture of France of winemaking, right? So this is in Central Eastern France. They have a very complex appellation system for labeling wines. Specifically, they make a lot of small quantities, and so this means really high prices for the wines from there. For the varieties for this, we see Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Chablis, and Beaujolais, right? So Chablis and Beaujolais are more of like a style, but those are included within the greater region of Burgundy. So Pinot Noir, we don't always associate Pinot Noir with the Sierra foothills. Generally, when people think about Pinot Noir, who know about wine, they think about really cooler climates. So maybe even some like coastal areas, right? Pinot Noir is difficult to grow. It has a really thin skin. It produces a really light, delicate red. But when it's done well, it can be a really fantastic wine. So it's a lot of work. But if someone makes it well, it's pretty big bragging rights. So Pinot Noir, primary flavors. Pinot can go either fruity or savory, right? Oftentimes Pinot gets a funk. We call it the Pinot funk. And this could be like mushroom, forest floor, terracotta, or like kind of clay pot kind of aromas. So because of that, Pinot Noir can be pretty polarizing with its audience. People either love it or some people hate it, right? So however they feel. A couple of producers in the Sierra foothills do make Pinot Noir, and that includes Boger Winery and E16 for Pinot. Okay, Chardonnay. You'll find it in almost every tasting room. Honorable mention for sure, this goes to Lava Cap. Like 1/3 of Lava Cap's production is just Chardonnay, and they make an amazing Chardonnay. And it's not the super buttery Chardonnay that was popular back in the 80s, right? This is a really nuanced Chardonnay with a creamy mouthfeel, but citrus, bright components tied to toasty components, right? So overall, it makes a really nice, complex wine. So this is Cabernet Sauvignon is the most planted red grape variety of the world. Chardonnay is the most planted white grape variety of the world, right? So Chardonnay makes a wonderful still wine, either what we call a stainless steel version, which is much more citrus and lean. And then we have an oaked version, which is generally like really creamy and buttery and kind of thicker, right? Chardonnay is also the traditional base variety for champagne. So it's the basis for a lot of sparkling wines, and that's made in a very specific style as well to achieve that. So it can be oaked or unoaked, right? An unoaked version would be associated with Chablis. An oaked version might be more associated with like American Chardonnay, American winemaking. But there's a huge, vast spectrum of flavors that could be produced through Chardonnay. So that's one of the reasons that a lot of producers like planting it too, because it offers a lot of flexibility in what you can make from it. So yeah, Chardonnay. All right. So that was Burgundy. Now we're going into the Rhone Valley, which is kind of the south, almost eastern-ish part of France here. So Rhone. You'll hear the word Rhone a lot in the Sierra foothills. You have the Rhone Rangers, which is a fun play on words. A lot of people who specialize in Rhone grape varieties, right? So in France specifically, it's typically divided by northern versus southern Rhone, right? So for northern Rhone, we see Syrah in white grape varieties, and for southern Rhone, we have a lot more diversity, right? There's also the small region of D, which sits at the foot of the French Alps and produces sparkling wines, which is really interesting. Not a lot of people talk about that area, but I think it's pretty cool. And so for these varieties that come from the Rhone Valley as a whole, you're looking at Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, GSM blends. So GSM just stands for Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. It's a blend of those 3 varieties. Then we have Marsanne and Viognier, right? And I believe Roussanne is also a part of that list. So Grenache, right? Grenache is the base of the famed Châteauneuf-du-Pape, right? The new chateau of the Pope. And it's a blend. And as the rest of the world just calls it a GSM, right? But if you see a Châteauneuf-du-Pape at the, at Total Wine or something, you can assume that it's a GSM. But Grenache is the leading variety of that blend. Le Casque makes a wonderful GSM. More people should make GSMs. I think they make really nice wines. But they also make just a regular Grenache too. So honorable mention for Grenache, Le Casque. Grenache is a much lighter grape variety most of the time. It can be made in a medium to full body style. This is just Wine Folly's interpretation of that. But typically you'll have like some really nice fruit and herbal components with Grenache. I like it a lot. Syrah is more bold than Grenache. Syrah is also part of the blend, right, for Châteauneuf-du-Pape, part of the GSM component, the S Syrah component. Here with Syrah, we can get a lot of black and blue fruits, or even some like stone fruits like plum, blueberry, and other components. Syrah can also take like a really interesting like olive character, which I didn't always appreciate Syrah until I understood that. And then when I could see that, oh, this is just olive, and I like olives, but I wasn't used to tasting it in wine, then I started to actually appreciate Syrah a lot more, right? So Syrah comes from the Rhone region, but in Australia, it's the same variety, but it's pronounced Shiraz, right? And I had to ask a fellow student who was from Australia. It's Shiraz. It's not Shiraz, right? It's just very much that flat A at the finish. And it's very famous in Australia. It makes really jammy, bold red wines, right? So if you're looking for a good Syrah, the Terra Rouge Ascent Syrah is 100-point, very consistently 100-point winning Syrah. Cedarville and Lava Cap make fantastic Syrahs. Okay, Mourvedre. This is the M component of a GSM. It's very rare. You'll hardly ever find this as a single variety in France, but it can be found as a single variety in California and Australia, where it is known as Mataro. So the Spanish name for Mourvedre. So Mataro, Mourvedre can be used interchangeably in the United States and also in Australia. But you'd be seeing Mataro specifically in Spain, right? So Terra Rouge makes a Mourvedre, and this is one of the darker components of the blend of a GSM as well, right? So Mourvedre typically helps with the finish. There's a lot of tannins on this. This roasted meat character is really interesting. Okay, so what does the GSM blend taste like when you put it all together, right? So Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, lots of berry, and then also lots of herbs. So rosemary and lavender. So there's a really freshness to GSM blends. I think that's why I love them so much. I grew up in the Sierra foothills. I mean, we have lavender and rosemary and mint and other things growing everywhere. So I think that's really nice. And then baking spices as well, right? So honorable mention, if you want to try a really good GSM, you can go to Edio, Lavender Ridge, or the Bayaki family vineyards. Very different from each other. Edio is here in Apple Hill in the Sierra foothills. Lavender Ridge is down in Murphy's area. It's a little bit of a drive from here. And then Bayaki is down in Sutter Creek, which is really nice too. And they do all, the last 2 wineries I know for sure do native ferments. Edio might do native as well, but I'd have to confirm. But Edio's a really fun place. You should check it out. Okay, Marsanne. So Marsanne blend is the it's like the white wine counterpart to GSM blends, right? So for the blend, we have Marsanne mostly with Roussanne, Grenache Blanc, and then sometimes Viognier is blended in. So these are all really nice white grape varieties. They typically have more body than like a Sauvignon Blanc would, which makes it really fun. So I know Bumgarner has these grape varieties, and sometimes they will do those blends. At Boger, we have one of these that sometimes we blend into the Sauv Blanc, but we haven't done it in a long time. Okay, Viognier. This is a slightly common one. You'll see a couple of wineries doing this one. This is another bolder white wine, more body, and a potential for higher alcohol, potentially. Sorry. And so this is originally from the small appellation of, I'm going to butcher that. If I try to pronounce it, I apologize. It's risen in popularity over the last century. It's now popular not just in France, but California, Argentina, and Australia. So I have had Viognier that is super oily and super heavy and not great. And I have had Viognier that is fantastic, that captures this peach component, really peachy. I will say for these bolder white wines, you want to make sure that you're tasting them slightly warmer than you think you would. When they're too cold, it actually mutes a lot of their characteristics. You want to drink them only slightly cold because all of the boldness and all these other characters come out a lot more when it's only slightly chilled. So, highly recommend. Okay, so again, I know some of you are going to be upset that I didn't talk about champagne. Some of you are going to be upset I didn't talk about, many other parts of France. But for the sake of time and for the sake of what's available locally, we're going to move on to Spain, right? Spain, one of the coolest winemaking countries for sure. One thing I haven't been to Spain, but what I didn't realize when I was doing research was how mountainous Spain is. It's the second most mountainous region in Europe after Switzerland, which is crazy, right? So, and Spain is cool because it's really a fusion of tradition and modern winemaking. So there's a traditional style, and that involves aging wine in American oak barrels for a longer time. Then there's a modern Alta expression, and this involves aging wine for a shorter time in French oak barrels, right? So really cool contrast there in how they make wines. Traditionally, they used American oak barrels because American oak was a lot cheaper. They could buy the oak and then just cooper it in Spain. But now that, winemaking has developed, now they're doing both, which is cool. So varieties of note from Spain are going to be Albarino, Tempranillo, and Graciano. And you can find all three of these in the Sierra foothills. That's why we're talking about them. Okay, Albarino, also known as Alvarinho in Portugal. I'm sorry if I butchered that. It's a really, really good white wine. Refreshing, zesty, light. This is going to be the next Sauvignon Blanc, in my opinion. Edio makes a fantastic Albarino. I literally bought a case. Can't recommend it enough. And they do a fantastic job. This grapefruit, saline, lemon zest, nectarine are all marks hit by Edio, which is great. It's just a really nice white wine. It's a food wine. It goes with everything, right? High acid and just very refreshing. You'd want this wine super cold. Super cold. It's going to be fantastic. So, check it out. Tempranillo. It's the most planted grape in all of Spain and the third most planted grape in the world. Tempranillo is the most satisfying grape to harvest, in my opinion. It's really big, heavy, long clusters, and they are just gorgeous. So whenever you're picking, it's always satisfying because you can feel the weight coming off the vine, and you're just like, yeah, harvesting so much, which is cool. So interestingly enough, Tempranillo, even though it is Spanish in origin, there's lots of synonyms in Spain for Tempranillo. So depending on what part of Spain, it might be labeled or called something else. And so some of those are Tinto Fino, Sensibel, Tinto del País, and Ul de Lebre. So just kind of all over the place. In Portugal, it's just called Tinto Roriz. So all of those varieties are all Tempranillo. So if you're shopping from a wine from Spain, if you see that, or Portugal, it's going to be Tempranillo, right? Tempranillo is also the basis of all Rioja blends, right? And we're going to talk about, do we talk about Rioja? No, we don't, sorry. Rioja is like the capital of one of the biggest regions of winemaking in all of Spain, and Tempranillo is their crown jewel, right? And so if you have a Rioja blend, it's going to be a majority Tempranillo grape variety, right? So, Tempranillo also has like a really characteristic leathery finish, in my opinion. It's something that I've seen that's consistent across the board. The cedar tobacco could be interpreted as leather when those are together, right? So I have some agreement there with Wine Folly. Honorable mention for Tempranillo, Boger and Bumgarner make fantastic Tempranillos. I know Boger's we're known for our Barbera, but we make really, really good other varieties as well, which is fun. So, Tempranillo. Okay, Graciano. This one I put in the slides is a personal favorite. It's actually not very commonly found in the Sierra foothills. Only a couple of wineries that make it. Boger will eventually release a single variety Graciano if I have anything to do with it, which will be fantastic because we make the best. But Graciano is mostly grown in northern Spain. Can be found in California and Australia, and it's in Spain as a blending grape for a lot of Rioja blends. So I kind of think of it as like the Petit Syrah of Spain a little bit. Like Petit Syrah is used for a lot of blending. So Graciano is a great blender, right? It's really good on its own. If you grow it well, it can be fantastic on its own though, right? So it has really rich color, tannins, and spices. Its typical tasting notes are plum, blackberry, boysenberry, clove, black tea, and spice, right? So that's really fun. So honorable mention goes to Boger. Can't wait for us to release a single variety Graciano. And then Wolf Heights in Sacramento produces a single variety Graciano as well. And Hellwig. Hellwig also produces a single variety Graciano, last time I checked. So if you're on a mission for good Graciano, check it out. Okay, and that brings us to our learning objectives. Again, sake of time, sake of brevity, just to keep this as baby's first steps into varieties you can find the Sierra foothills. We do offer a wines of the world tasting class in the fall. So if you are interested in that, email me or look into it. And in there, we actually go into much, much more depth of all of these countries and all of these regions, and we do tastings from those countries. So feel free to let me know. I hope that you were able to enjoy this presentation. I hope that you enjoyed the class. Thank you all so much for joining me this summer, and I look forward to seeing you around in the future, and I wish you luck with any endeavors that you're working on. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. I'll see you next time.